Hello, everyone. Great to see you. I'm Terry Mottershead. I'm the Executive Director of the Centre for Legal Innovation at the College of Law. Absolutely delighted to welcome you to this inaugural session of Legal GenAI around the world, focusing today on Australia and New Zealand. We've got three amazing panellists for you, and I say that with absolute sincerity. These folks are not just working in GenAI, but really creating the path and the way that we're using this in legal. So if I may, I'd love to introduce to you Matt Farrington, who is Senior Legal Counsel in the Vice-Chancellor's Office at Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. Hi, Matt. Great to see you.
Kia ora, Terry.
And if I may also introduce Karen Sandler, who's Partner and Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer at Gilbert and Tobin, and also our CLI Advisory Board co-chair, and Karen is based in Australia. Hi, Karen, good to see you.
Hi, Terry. Hi, all.
And last but certainly not least is Dom Woolrich, who is the co-founder and CEO of LawPath, and Dom is also based in Australia. Dom, great to see you as well.
Hi, Terry. Thanks for having me.
So, folks, I reckon we should kick off. What do you think? Yeah, sounds good?
Sounds good.
So I thought we'd kick off with a little about each of you. And Karen, I'm going to throw this question to you first. Because we are focused on a session on legal GenAI, really a little bit about what your role is in relation to that, but also where your firm is in its GenAI journey. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Terry, and obviously delighted to be here. So as you mentioned earlier, I'm Partner and Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer at a firm called Gilbert and Tobin. We are a law firm in the Australian market, and really my role is sort of the lead of the legal service innovation team, of which we look to both drive efficiency and effectiveness of legal service delivery within the Gilbert and Tobin business to our clients. And also on the side, we work very closely with our in-house counsel and clients on their own transformation journey. So I suppose I see it on both sides. In terms of the GenAI journey and sort of where we've been to date and where we're going, we are very focused, obviously, on leveraging GenAI internally within the organisation, and obviously have spent the last year or so really getting up to speed with GenAI, its capability, obviously both the opportunities as well as the risks in using it too. Obviously, it presents a number of legal issues as well, which we've had to work through, as no doubt most other law firms have had to do as well. And then we've been looking at a variety of use cases internally as well, and I suspect we'll probably talk about that later on. What's been really interesting as well is obviously seeing it from the client lens. So as much as we're focusing on it internally, we've got a number of clients that are really focusing on it as well, and are sort of wanting to get our support with that too. And obviously my role in this is obviously alongside our AI steering committee, and we've got these sort of committees that we assembled already a year ago or so, working very closely with a number of different professionals within the organisation to really push out our GenAI strategy more broadly within the firm.
Really, really interesting there that you have a GenAI strategy and that it's kind of evolved to that point already, right?
I suspect it will continue to evolve as well.
Exactly.
There's a strategy at the moment, but who knows what it might look like tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Dom, I want to throw this question to you as well. And, you coming at it again from a slightly different point of view. So tell us a little bit about your role and where you are. You're kind of creating the GenAI journey, I guess, really. So love to hear your thoughts on this too.
Thanks, Terry. So yes, as mentioned, I'm co-founder and CEO of LawPath. We are a legal technology business based in Australia, live for clients in Australia and clients in the US. We've been building software in the legal space for coming up on 8 years now.
Wow.
And we've had about 450,000 Australian businesses use our software to solve, their legal and compliance needs. Our kind of GenAI journey started probably about 14 months ago, when it's likely a lot of our journey started. And we've been really leaning in. The mission of LawPath is to make legal more accessible, and effectively more affordable for Australian small businesses. And there's a lot of attributes that GenAI bring to the industry which can achieve those two things. So we've been building on top of the OpenAI and Anthropic platforms now for about 12 months. We made the call very early on to be agnostic in terms of which models we might use, which has turned out to be a really good move because, as Karen said, things are changing so quickly, people's strategies are changing so quickly that you really need to be very agile in the space. But we've learned a lot along the way. We've got over 20,000 clients now using our Gen AI tools in the platform. So lots of really interesting learnings on how clients are viewing using AI, the risks that they perceive, and then most importantly, the benefit that they're getting from these tools.
Absolutely. Then we have to get into that in a bit more as well, because that's going to be fascinating, I'm sure. But let me wrap this one up with you, Matt. Again, your role and how your university, I guess, really a huge organisation is, or where they are on their Gen AI journey.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. I mean, as you've hinted at, the university is a big organisation, and we've got different skill sets, different areas of responsibility, and I guess our AI journey includes like quite a few different aspects. I'm an in-house lawyer, and we're a large organisation that is considering how we use AI in our day-to-day work, my legal work, other areas of the university as any other corporate enterprise. But obviously we're also then grappling with the student and the education aspect. How do you, teach students AI? How do you teach law students AI? How does AI affect those other substantive areas of law? And then obviously the academic integrity, what's okay use of AI, what's actually just cheating. I will share with you now, if you start your assignment with, as a large language model, I would suggest you're probably on shaky ethical grounds. But then we've also got an engineering and computer science department who are completely at the other end of the spectrum. They know all about Hugging Face. They download their own models. They try hard to break things. And then finally, we've got one of New Zealand's leading academics on algorithmic transparency, who's on the Global Partnership on AI and calling for essentially regulation of these things. So there's really quite like a lot of organizations, I would suspect, there is a diverse aspect, and I am more and more coming to believe that, electricity, the internet, AI, these are all general purpose transformative technologies that are fundamentally going to change the way we work, that nothing is going to escape unscathed from these things. And so I think it behooves us all to learn and understand and figure this stuff out in a responsible fashion.
Where would you put because it's interesting with such a large, complex organisation and so many aspects that you spoke to, where would you put yourself on that journey? Are you kind of starting, experimenting, or do you feel that it's patchy because you've got so many different people?
So me personally, I'm a geek. I've never met a service that I wouldn't sign up to. I was on the OpenAI waiting list 3 years ago. So, that's me. Look, as an organisation, we are conscious of our status as koanatanga guardians of our, of student data, staff data. And so in some aspects, we are going very slowly, very carefully, at an enterprise level. How we roll out stuff, we've identified some discrete, what we think are relatively safe testing and proving grounds, and that's where we're acting first. Obviously through to the other end of, empowering our academics that will look, if you want to try that service, look, your worst case scenario is if you load up your own documents, you've given away copyright because you're training something to replace yourself. But look, as long as you're not uploading confidential information or student information, that's probably okay. So we're going to empower you to experiment and test in those spaces. So I guess cautiously optimistic, cautiously forward thinking. We do want to embrace these things, but there are certain areas we've identified as higher risk. I guess again, one of my personal experiences as a lawyer operating in the space, there are all sorts of legal risks associated with AI. Not all those legal risks have a legal solution. You can't contract away the risk. And so if you take that risk-based assessment. Well, right, in this use case or with these users or with that data, you can go relatively safely, but there are, you know, certain places where there are dragons that you need to just be careful of.
Yeah, absolutely. And on those use cases, I wanted to jump into those next. It seems to almost be the year of use cases at the moment, really having to identify them and explain them, maybe even find metrics that can measure them. But there's certainly a big focus on it. And Karen, I wanted to go back to you with this question, and that is, I guess, how you're seeing GenAI being used in legal businesses. But if I can wrap into that some other bits where you see it evolving, because it is, you know, obviously the focus is quite prevalent. And also, and I think you touched on this earlier, how clients are kind of reacting to these in terms of whether they're helping you identify those use cases, which of course would make sense, but also the extent to which they're looking for you to disclose them, because I think that's the other kind of meaty point around this as well, isn't it? So if I can ask that very big question of you.
This is lots in there, Terry.
I know. You choose what you like, you know?
All right. So let me first start at sort of just general use cases. What was interesting is from the G&T perspective, early last year where sort of, you know, there was really a lot of talk around generative AI. Obviously, it landed the year before, but that was probably when the legal industry and many other industries latched onto it. We actually ran an internal bounty within our organization. And basically we put out to the firm, you know, at that point in time, there was absolutely no confidential data being utilized, but we did want them to experiment in their personal capacities with ChatGPT. We had a landing page when they went onto ChatGPT saying very clearly that they cannot put any content or data in there that was confidential or client data. But the purpose was that for them to get a feel as to how you suppose prompt a system, how you understand what the potential use cases would be. And interestingly, Terry, off the back of that, we got 106 submissions to the bounty. There were about 5 winners in the end because we couldn't really determine a single winner. But I suppose what that did show to us was there is enormous use case for generative AI. And really, I think, you know, what we've been doing is we've been looking at a number of those use cases. Some of them were legal and some of them were also more operational in nature. So to streamline, for example, understanding clients, you know, going through annual reports, for example, just generally in the BD marketing space as well, just to improve, you know, documentation, obviously to summarize documentation as well. But then obviously we went into territory like research, which is an obvious one, you know, reviewing documentation, again, another one, and something certainly on the in-house side, clients are actively trying to see whether GenAI and previously to GenAI, you know, machine learning tools can support them in reviewing documentation like NDAs and SaaS agreements and things like that. And then obviously drafting is another obvious one too. So what we've been doing on our end is we've been experimenting with Copilot, and obviously we've been very cautious as to what data goes in and out these systems, but we've been looking at that, and obviously that for us is just really a productivity tool at the moment, and we see potential and quite enormous benefit off the back of that. Again, that will play out over the next sort of 6 months or so, and we'll get some really good insight into how lawyers ultimately will utilize that and how our operational teams will utilize that as well. And then we are doing a number of proof of concepts as well. And they are, you know, very squarely in the review space as well as the drafting space as well, and to see how it performs. You know, part of what we've done is also assemble teams internally in terms of how we assess these technologies. And I think the jury is still out as to, you know, all the metrics around it. I think we need to get more comfortable with these tools to really get insight into that. But again, that's where we are seeing a lot of sort of emerging capability. And I suspect to your next question as to how that will be evolving in 2024, I think this will be the year of use cases. I think last year there was a lot of time spent getting comfortable around what data can go in and out. Also just getting a handle on generative AI, probably building the capability of teams to support with that change, which is obviously a really important piece. And again, I suspect we'll get onto that, at some time during this session. But I think we'll probably start seeing use cases emerge, both in terms of how people are developing that internally or alternately leveraging third-party technologies. I think, fueling that will be a number of technology of vendors on the market actually adding the GenAI capability to their products over the next year. So that will mean that, organizations can remain using their own technology, but they've obviously got the GenAI capability in that. And whether that be document management, whether it be contract management, the list goes on in that area. In terms of clients' engagement, as I mentioned earlier, clients are certainly wanting us to support them in their own internal use cases or with their own internal use cases, and really getting a handle on the technology. We've spent a number of months, working with in-house teams, really developing their capability, understanding this technology, because obviously it is a technology that is new and not everyone, understands it fully. And so one needs to get across all the jargon and everything that goes with it. Again, so we're certainly supporting them in terms of looking for use cases for them internally. But again, I expect that 2024 will be the year that we also look at that collaborative approach as to how we could work together to, support them and also the delivery of our legal services, make that more efficient and effective using GenAI.
Yeah, absolutely. And that collaborative approach is at the core of what you're doing, Dom, I imagine, and the use cases that you're identifying and rolling out. So tell us a little bit about this from your perspective.
Yeah, the way we kind of come at the use cases is our platform is really about building and providing tools to the end user, so effectively our clients. And so, the lowest hanging fruit, as you could say, is definitely around document automation. So two of our main features of our LawPath AI system are document review and contract clause drafting, which we really saw them, in our 12-month journey. We launched them in the first couple of months and saw immediate take up there. We see roughly 20% of our clients will actually opt to use the LawPath AI or the AI features over contacting a lawyer. So which is very interesting, especially when they pay for both. I think what we've been able to identify is that a lot of clients are using the AI tools as almost an initial triage system to answer their kind of maybe higher level queries until they feel the need that they then should engage a professional. So what we're seeing a lot of use cases popping up is that the AI will do the initial part of the process, and then you'll engage with a lawyer and have a kind of hybrid delivery type system. But to Karen's point, interestingly, we've seen a lot of operational kind of use cases actually almost outweigh the core legal use cases. I think we always talk about contract review, contract drafting, that's what's going to change with AI, but actually there's things like proposal creation. So we spend a lot of time internally creating proposals. We can pull down from our database all of the information about our clients and similar industries and actually auto-generate proposals, customized proposals for them, which saves a lot of time internally, especially around billing as well, deciding how much to charge. I think that sometimes gets pushed to the side a little bit, but it's actually a really, really important part of legal practice. And so we will see the big headlines around, AI will replace lawyers, and we all think, oh, they're going to draft documents for us. But there is also the side of AI, well, specifically GenAI, which is the operational side. So one of the areas that we're really focusing in on at the moment is almost kind of customized workflows. So, one of the big benefits of going to see a lawyer when you're a small business is they'll tell you the steps that you need to go through, and they'll tell you those steps based on their 30 years of experience of advising 1,000 other clients. What we're really working on is taking that database of 450,000 clients that we've got and saying, okay, here are all the other businesses that have very similar attributes to you. These are the registrations they got, the documents they completed, the clauses they used, the processes they went through, and then using data to actually, I'll use the word advise in quotations, but advise the client through different processes. So those are the main ones for us at the moment.
So it's also taking those insights and really leveraging them into products in a way, really, isn't it? Which is
Exactly
amazing.
right.
Yeah, amazing. Matt, what about you? Where are you seeing the use cases in, I guess, in your department, but maybe across the university as well?
Yeah, sure. So happy to talk to all those points. And I think just to build on something Dom just said, like something I'm increasingly getting I think is a useful distinction, not just in AI, but in kind of legal tech generally, is the difference between what I would call client-facing technologies. So I can sit down at the chatbot, ask it a question and get advice or services back, versus, legal tech versus lawyer tech, well, tools and technologies for lawyers to use. Because one would hope, and I appreciate that the evidence doesn't actually play this out, something that has gone wildly off-piste will be picked up by an experienced human in the loop acting as the filter. That's not always the case. We are all aware of those high-profile things. And so I guess in that sense, we've got a couple of different use cases underway, and very much from an enterprise and a legal perspective, going slowly, figuring these things out as we go. And so in terms of probably, genuine generative AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, of that ilk, the approach we're taking is, well, we're still at the pilot stage, but the current thinking is, well, right, we're going to pilot it with users that understand AI, probably understand their subject matter, and are going to use it in discrete areas and can be trusted either not to upload stuff that they shouldn't, or treat the answers it gives back with some care. And so I'm pleased to say I was user number 2 of Copilot at the university and have been busily stress testing it for the last couple of weeks. Does some things really well, some things probably slightly less impressive, but there is then talk about, well, once we go post-pilot, people are going to have to mandatory education before you get your hands on it. And in a truly awful pun, I came up with the driver's DRAI Viz license. So I do apologize for that in advance. Not least of which, something to bear in mind, Copilot is, if you are using it regularly, it's fantastic value. But if you are using it once a month to ask a question, it's actually quite expensive. And so we certainly don't want the entire university just to sign up for Copilot, because it's going to add a lot to our bills. So that's what I would describe as our lawyer tech example. And so where I'm personally using it, I find it great as I'm in-house, I don't really have junior lawyers. It's my law clerk. Hey, can you please go and draft me a X clause? I know we've got some templates. I just can't be bothered going and finding them. So things like, I need to drop in a anti-modern slavery clause or a pastoral care clause or something along those lines that I don't actually care if it's 100% right. I just need something for a starting point that I can then slot in. Yeah. And, so it's replacing either the Google search or the document management system search to do the same thing. Just give me that first cut of it. I've found it I thought it was going to replace me writing emails. It's not very good. It hasn't got my tone yet at all right, but it is very good about, we use Teams by preference. It is absolutely fantastic for transcribing Teams and, hey, these were the action points from the meeting. That is kind of the game changer, application for me right now. But we are also using it in a few other different respects. And one of the things we've noticed in, let's say, the legal tech side of things, the client, the customer facing side of things. And this is where, some of the technology comes into place, and you've got to pick the right tool for the right cause. But we have essentially a whole lot of information on our internet and intranet pages. And if you know where you're looking for these things, the answers are there, but there is a lot of them. I found myself talking about the compliance pyramid a lot lately, and the base of the pyramid being the willing compliers. They just need to know what the rules are. It's really hard to digest all our information. So we've trained a bot effectively on publicly available information already, put up some safety rails that only answer based on things you've actually found. Don't hallucinate new answers. And we're trialing that with staff and students to basically ask questions about, well, what are the university's rules around X? So our first pilot was a couple of weeks back, student O week, whole lot of new students on campus. Hey, what do you need to know about the university? Try asking the bot. And that was a roaring success. The most common question was, how do I find my way around? And it wasn't great at answering those questions. So that was a learning for us. So those kind of adding some safety around either constraining the answers it can give or constraining the users that can use it for general purposes, and that seems to be working well so far. I guess this is being probably those ones are largely centrally driven, but whereas for some other things, and this is where I sort of sit in the middle, like I have clients, but I'm also a client of others.
Yeah.
And so, academics doing their own thing, again, we've given advice to, but within limits, told about that's where we're constraining what data you do. But definitely we are driving a lot of provider behavior. And so one of something that's come out in the last probably 3 or 6 months, people on a Zoom call or a Teams call, have you seen the bot join the meeting? So there's a few different ones. Transcribing the meeting using something else. And that kind of prompted a bit of alarms because we were discussing some relatively sensitive information in that call. And so our initiative there is kind of back to the old days of when people didn't quite trust the cloud. Our NDA now has you must not use any AI tools unless you've told us about them in advance.
Yeah.
Just because, you had to treat them confidentially, and we were now willing to let you trust our providers that, hey, you can pick a secure cloud service. We're less confident about their ability to pick a secure AI service because we just don't know what's out there. Who's just doing a chat GPT wrapper? Who's actually invented something new? Like lots of different things like that. And so it's not you must not, but you must tell us what tools you're using. And that seems to be driving a bit of behavior. People prefer to use the Teams or the Zoom inbuilt transcription rather than, well, this other thing was available for free. I'm sure there are no downsides. So that is definitely driving some of our behavior. Just the final point I want to make is not every student asks about generative AI, but there are a few that are starting to. The university is a government organisation. We're subject to what's in New Zealand, the Official Information Act, Freedom of Information laws, where students have some rights to know what algorithms are being used about them. And so I do feel that is going to become something of a new standard, that at least the core enterprise AI tools and what you do with it. It's not there yet, but it's not far away.
Yeah, it's on the near horizon. Yeah, absolutely. We can't really leave this question without talking about large language models. We've been touching on it in various different respects, I guess. And Dom, I wanted to throw the question about LLMs to you. Quite rightly, and I think Matt and Karen and yourself have already referred to this, they're kind of under scrutiny at the moment. And I think, as it's the year of use cases, probably the year of large language models as well, in one way, shape or form. And the question that seems to come up all the time with this at the moment is, do you build or do you buy? And what's influencing those decisions? And again, we've touched on some of them, but I'm wondering if we could address that really full on about the whole question about large language models and what do we do? Do we build them? Do we buy them? What do we do with them? And you're the man for that, I know.
We've tried to do both, build and buy. And let me tell you, buying is easier. But the long answer is LLMs over the last kind of 14 months have gone crazy. The launch of ChatGPT kicked it off late 2022. And then what we've seen is kind of 5 to 6 kind of large players, the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsofts, they all have their large language models. And to be frank, no one's going to catch them. No one's going to be able to compete in terms of scale and size and money that they're investing into these models. And so I think early on in what I'll call the most recent kind of GenAI craze, everyone was contemplating, do we build an LLM? And I think my opinion and a few other people I've spoken to is that kind of argument is settled now, which is unless you're looking for a hyper-specific use case, piggybacking off the back of these large LLMs is the way to go. From a cost perspective, from a maintenance perspective, and just from an economies of scale, we're never going to get there. So what we've seen probably over the last 6 months is people get comfortable with this idea that we're going to start using third-party LLMs. And this is kind of in the separate stream to this is people have started to get more comfortable with the privacy and the data and the confidentiality and where's my data being kept. And so that was, as Karen said, a lot of last year was about trying to figure all that stuff out and get comfortable. And then what we've seen recently is definitely a move towards using what's called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. And essentially what this is that you have a database, or typically a vector database that your business has on your system with your proprietary data in it. And before you send a query off to the large language model, you actually kind of do a pit stop at this database and you pull out the proprietary or the information you want to contextualize the input to then send it to the large language model to get the best outcome. So the way I kind of think about it a little bit is like, you're a principal in a law firm, you've got an associate that's just joined you, you want them to draft you a document. One option would be to say, based on everything you learned at uni, go out and just draft me this document. And they're going to come back and they're going to give you an okay document because they spent 6 years studying and they've got access to the internet. And they're going to give you kind of an okay output there. Whereas what you can do when you have your own vector database and you use RAG is you say, hey, associate, before you go and draft that document, go past our library, pull out all of our playbooks, all of our deal books, all of our precedents, study those first, and then take with you what you need and go and draft me that document. So you're going to get a much more specific output or a much more specific outcome if you use that type of system. And so that's what has become really, really popular now. So instead of training or updating an LLM, you effectively purchase or have access to the kind of the big LLMs around the world. And then you have your own database, which allows you to further customize and enrich your own data. And that's the model that we're using here at LawPath. We're getting a lot of really good success. And I think what we're finding is that not only can you really improve it based on the additional proprietary data that you have, but you can also contextualize that data as well. So what we find is that certain users that, or I'll use the word clients. Clients are taking different actions within our platform all the time. We can actually use that data to further enrich our AI rather than sending it off to Microsoft and saying, hey, can you update the LLM with this specific type of data, which is never going to happen. So probably a long way of saying that we've moved away from this idea that we will build our own LLMs to more that we will sit on top of already the pre-existing foundational models. And I think just to close out, this idea of build or buy, what we are seeing is that it's extremely expensive to maintain or build your own GenAI systems. And so the model where you can just pay a subscription fee or a usage fee through tokens to a much larger player definitely seems the way to go. I think what we are also seeing is that sales cycles in legal tech are long. And it's about making sure that the firm or whoever's using the system gets very comfortable with where their data is, where their data is stored, the privacy. And so as Karen kind of alluded to early on, it is much easier to buy a system from an already existing third-party player that's already gone through all of your approvals. And all they've done is turned on the switch that says, hey, client, here's our brand new AI system. It's already passed all the security checks. It's already above board. We're already using your data. You're already plugged in. Just, have a go. And that, I think, is why we're seeing the Lexis Plus, Case Text, those type of platforms really take off, because we're all really comfortable with Lexis using our data already, or we're all comfortable with whoever it might be. So they have a big unfair advantage here in that they've already got the distribution channels into the firms.
Absolutely. Matt, I think from what you were saying before, you're probably in the buy category as well, but let me ask you directly, yes or no? Where do you?
Yeah, so look, as an enterprise organization, we are absolutely in the buy territory. I again agree with everything Dom has said. I mean, just a couple of other observations. Most lawyers, you will pry away from Outlook and Word only under the most extreme forms of duress. I have actively tried to get lawyers using Gmail and Google Docs, much less some of the truly geeky, content generation tools that have currently installed on my desktop, and you can't. I mean, and in all honesty, Word's killer feature for lawyers is track changes, and track changes to Google Docs don't work very well. So lawyers are going to be in the Microsoft ecosystem for forever. So in the same way that we all signed up to Teams because it came as part of the subscription, and SharePoint because it came as part of the subscription, I strongly suspect Copilot is going to become the de facto legal tool, just from those network and cross those network effects. And Copilot works exactly as effectively Dom's described. It's aware of your data without actually using it to train the model itself. Another factor to bear in mind, EU regulation of AI has effectively been launched, but is not yet in force. Still waiting on the detail, but very much one of the criticisms of it is it's pulling up the ladder behind the big players. The big players can afford to comply with all these rules, new players can't. So I strongly suspect we will be heading towards the buy by default. That said, if you'd asked me 3 years ago where we'd be at with AI, I wouldn't have guessed this. And so you never know what's coming tomorrow. AI as a rule has been, well, right now it's been a hardware revolution where we're all these breakthroughs by running it on bigger, faster hardware. If there's a software breakthrough tomorrow when we've all got a self-aware, AI sitting in our pocket, well, maybe it's Samsung or Apple that actually, takes the torch and carry it forward. So I think at an enterprise level, it's probably buy 1, 2, and 3, daylight, then build. That said, we're a university. We have academics. Academics like to do things. We are building a few of our models ourselves, and in fact, actively testing, well, is this model or ChatGPT more effective at this particular task? And so there's always going to be some of that. I think to Dom's point, and I think actually probably to Dom's point in some of the terminology, I actually far prefer the term LLM than generative AI. Generative AI, making something new, yep, it can absolutely do that, but LLMs can do other things too, and they are used a little bit interchangeably, and actually using an LLM to categorize or classify vast troves of data is actually kind of a safer use case. It's harder to hallucinate a summarization than it is to hallucinate something completely new. So I guess in that sense, understanding what the technology does and how it works, there are, in terms of the general purpose AIs, use it for anything, have it sitting in literally in your Outlook window to help you draft or summarize. Absolutely, it's going to be buy, and I think it's probably by Microsoft. For some specific tasks like technology assisted review, help me with a discovery exercise, e-discovery, some of those tasks, there may well be some benefits from, you may buy, and it may still be sitting on the underlying fundamental LLM architecture, but a whole lot of tuning and modification by the likes of, Dom and other vendors to actually produce one of the criticisms of Microsoft is it does 80% of things that 100% of people need. And if you need an LLM that does X and Copilot doesn't, you may still be able to get it on Microsoft architecture, but you're going to need some more help along the way. But that's more of a configuration tuning exercise than necessarily having to build your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And Karen, let me wrap on this question of you looking at it from the law firm perspective. What are you doing with LLMs, or what are law firms doing with LLMs?
Look, I think it's much the same as what Matt and Dom have already talked about. I think the cost to develop your own model at the moment, Terry, would be enormous. And I think, to Matt's point, nothing stands still. So we might be in a completely different position in a couple of years' time, which may change, what we've all said today. But the reality is, often there is confidence in a number of the providers that are, developing their own. In fact, many of them are not building their own models either. They are, leveraging techniques like RAG to, make it more legal specific, and they've got the data to do that. So I think, utilizing techniques like RAG, which is not building per se, but more sort of, maybe tweaking it to make it more relevant to legal, I think will be definitely the way to go, and certainly what we're seeing in the market at the moment. That still does, I should say, Terry, that still does require some level of capability internally within organisations. Alternately, procuring that through a third-party vendor or whatever that looks like. So, you know, it's not just purchasing a product. I'm sure there'll be many where you just purchase the product out of the box and that's it. But there is the ability to do some work on top of that to make it a bit more specific to your organisation or to legal in general.
Yeah. I want to stay with you, Karen, if I may, on that question of capabilities, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, but as I listen to you all speak about this, we're going through just a massive set of capabilities that we've never had to think about in terms of law firms, pretty much any way you think about it, in terms of in-house, in terms of the work that you do as a vendor, Dom, just in terms of understanding. It's like a whole new language that we're talking about. There's a whole new set of capabilities that we've got to bring to bear on this, whether it's an LLM or it's something else. And I just kind of wonder, and as I say, Karen, I want to ask you this question first. Do we have all of those capabilities now, like today as we sit here, or and are we sourcing those exclusively locally, like in Australia and New Zealand? Are we bringing folks internationally? And how's it impacting the roles that you have in your respective organisations? So, Karen, law firms?
Again, a lot in there, Terry. So in terms of capabilities, I think it very much depends, Terry, on the type of organisation one is in. So I'm obviously going to reflect more on like law firms and possibly even in-house teams. You know, my team didn't exist 8 years ago or so, maybe a bit longer, maybe 9 years ago or so. I've been building out a transformation capability within the firm for a number of years. I am completely aware that many organizations have not done that. And so there is no doubt when we are going down a path of LLMs and integrating this into our everyday work, that capability around continuous improvement, transformation, how you work in with your stakeholders, whether they be internally within an organization or whether they be in-house as well, is going to be absolutely critical. And I think we've certainly seen over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, you know, organizations, if they didn't have that capability, try build that capability, or alternately grow that capability. So, you know, even from my side, as I said, I've had transformation specialists in the team for a number of years. I've had, you know, team members that are very focused on machine learning, but obviously I'm building out a data science capability because that is what we need as well. So I think the capabilities will need to grow, and also those specialists that work in with the lawyers to engage with them. I think on the other side, we need to develop the capability of our lawyers. So, you know, we've spent a number of hours sort of working with our lawyers, and that will grow over time as well as they get more familiar with the LLMs and utilising these products in their day-to-day. But again, there is a lot of upskilling, and that upskilling takes time and effort. And, you know, there's sessions like this, Terry, that is amazing for people to tune into. You know, so there is this content that is there. But in addition to that, a number of organisations are looking to do some of that internally as well. So we need to build that capability. In terms of locally versus globally sourcing that capability, look, I think the Australian market is quite amazing. I do think it is a very competitive market in Australia, as we all know. And as such, we've actually had to really push into these areas over a number of years, even prior to generative AI and LLMs being on the scene. So I think it is absolutely possible to get this talent. The question is there enough talent to go around, and do you have to build and grow some of that talent? And I think the answer would probably be somewhere in between. And I think we will have to spend time growing talent in these areas. And, you know, there's no doubt a number of people are finding this area quite interesting. So there might be attraction into these areas too. And I've certainly seen evidence of that over a number of months too. Where it might go, again, I wish I had a crystal ball on that one, Terry. But, you know, I just think it's going to grow in nature. I think that this concept of multidisciplinary teams, which we've seen, as I said, emerge over a number of years now anyway. But what this change and what this LLM piece has really shown us is really the importance of that collaborative approach to it. You know, when I talked about the AI steering committee earlier, you know, that's risk, that's our legal team, compliance, leadership roles, sort of my role, our CTO and security officers, so it really is a combination of talent that is going to actually enable us to get to there. So I think, I was obviously referencing in my teams in sort of a legal service innovation team, but there's no doubt technology teams are rethinking what they require over here in terms of the capability as well as capacity to build out the infrastructure to enable us to leverage these large language models and, engage with vendors and everything. So I think there's going to be a lot of moving parts in a lot of different areas.
But it also speaks to the impact of GenAI, doesn't it? Because it's not just a tech thing. It's impacting every single aspect of the business. It's almost pervasive in a way. So I can well imagine how those folks have to be represented in a kind of a management level as well as obviously an operational level as well.
Absolutely. And as you know, Terry, it presents huge opportunity, but it also presents a number of risks. And so I know there have been a number of cases where the technology has hallucinated and it's produced fictitious cases and the like. And frankly, I know that there's been a lot of concern around that in terms of how can lawyers sort of, miss that. The reality is we've never seen technology like this. We've never seen technology that is capable of doing or producing outputs that are so convincing in one way. So again, really developing that capability is absolutely critical over here.
We've got a question that's asking us to explain a little bit more about hallucination. Do you want to stay with that one while you're on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some wonderful terms that are utilized when it comes to generative AI or large language models. And hallucinate is effectively when the technology produces an output that is factually incorrect. So, you might, and I'll reference the case from the US last year, Terry, because I think actually an example is probably the best way to demonstrate it. There was a lawyer by the name of Schwartz, 30-year lawyer, so huge amounts of experience. And he was acting for a client against an airline, and in court, he produced a brief and he cited a number of cases. And when the court saw those cases, they obviously recognized that those cases didn't exist. And, the outcome from the court was, well, how could you do this? And, where is this from? And he said it was from ChatGPT. And they said, well, how did you verify that? And he said, I asked ChatGPT if they were correct. So effectively it is, and he said, yes. Exactly. But, I suppose I had a little bit of sympathy there because it does it so convincingly. And, I even tested it afterwards and put in, give me a case Sandler and X, and it told me all the facts. It told me it was in the High Court, told me what the decision was. So it is really able to generate that output. It only predicts the next word, this technology. It literally predicts the next word. So it can hallucinate. It can produce content that is factually incorrect. So that is what one needs to be very mindful of, particularly when utilizing this technology, because you need to really verify the accuracy. So this concept of hallucination is when it produces a false output.
Yeah, absolutely. And no one's going to excuse you from your professional responsibility about that either. But
exactly, and that's clearly been shown. So this is the risk in the technology, and there are ways, and we've referenced it already, there are ways to minimize hallucinations. So, utilizing RAG is a really good technique to enable that. So I think we shouldn't look at it as a legal industry and say, oh, well, that means we shouldn't use this technology. We should absolutely face into the fact that there are risks with this technology, but one can actually work around these limitations and also obviously have the right sort of governance and protocols in place to enable the factual outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, I want to ask you this question, and we're focusing this first session on Australia and New Zealand. And the question that I want to ask you is this: is there anything unique, really different in the Australian and New Zealand market in this space, in the legal, particularly generative AI space? And what, if anything, is that?
So I don't know unique, but certainly one of the key points of distinction I think we need to bear in mind is the value we place on indigenous knowledge. In New Zealand, Mātauranga Māori, I appreciate there are probably different terms in Australia. A lot of these AI developments are obviously driven out of the US, and certainly the United States doesn't seem to have that same cultural view that personal privacy is a human right, something to be protected. It's far more of an asset to be traded and given away. And you can look at that in the context of GDPR versus literally the profession of data brokers in the United States. The one federal law protecting personal information is the Video Hire Rental Protection Act, which everyone thinks is some congressman was renting blue movies, and so it's like, oh, well, you can't share that information. There's an excellent John Oliver piece on this, and so I think there is that cultural dynamic. So I don't know that that makes New Zealand and Australia unique, but it certainly distinguishes us from some of the things that are happening in the United States. I also think possibly, I mean, certainly the New Zealand market and probably less so the Australian market, there is quite a concentration of, I guess, legal development being driven by the bigger firms. The US is a far more disparate market. There are small firms doing innovative things, there are big firms doing innovative things, and clearly vice versa. Whereas I think certainly my experience of the New Zealand market, if you are in a 3-person suburban conveyancing practice, you're probably not actively engaging in what AI can do for you. So I do think there is that difference there. I suspect we are also, well, again, I don't think we're unique, but certainly New Zealand is extraordinarily reactive. We will pass, and without a bicameral legislature or state governments, the New Zealand government feels free to legislate at the drop of a hat if there is a big enough scandal involved. And so one can never rule out, government department X has done Y with AI, and a week later we have a new, comprehensive set of AI rules and regulations. It might not happen. You can't rule it out. So watch this space. I mean, in terms of the regulatory trends, I suspect we're going to get a repeat of the GDPR, so the Brussels effect, where Europe's going to pass these laws. They'll be the toughest. Everyone will just comply with the toughest laws by default. We'll gnash our teeth and wail about how unjust it is, but then we'll just get on and do it anyway. And so complying with the European laws means you're probably generally compliant. In terms of lawyer professional responsibility, I feel like probably work needs to be done. And as I've mentioned before, I see AI as genuinely transformative, and it could well be a disruptive rather than a sustaining innovation. And so legal practice for a very long time was someone asked a question, the lawyer thought about it for a bit and gave an answer. And whether that was in-person, letter, fax machine, word processor, email, the pace of that turnaround probably got faster, but it was genuinely like, you were paying a person for their time. AI may well finally kill the billable unit. I mean, the billable unit is pretty strong, so let's not rule it out. But definitely there is that aspect to it. So, and it always strikes me culturally, and again, I don't know about Australia, but New Zealand, it's okay to say, oh, I'm no good at technology. No one would stand up in front of a room without a sense of shame that they say they can't read. But, it's almost to be encouraged, oh, no technology. And I don't know that is going to cut it for much longer, because if you're no good at technology, you're just doing things manually. And if you're doing things manually, you may well be replaced by someone that's I don't think AI will replace lawyers, but, this trope, and a lawyer using AI may well replace a lawyer who's not using AI. But with every opportunity comes a threat. I really worry about, well, what are junior lawyers going to do tomorrow? So personally, I use my AI tool to replace effectively what I get a law clerk or a summer clerk to do. Now, if the baby lawyer jobs are being replaced by AI, how do the baby lawyers become the senior lawyers? And so I really think there's probably a piece to look at in our educational framework. Again, I don't know about Australia, but New Zealand effectively has more or less mandatory training of legal databases. You can't pass law school without engaging with the legal databases, even though you could go and look in the books. I feel like we need something similar for AI tools. Obviously, fast-moving, highly disruptive area. Any, regulatory regime that says you have to learn this, that, and the other thing may well be obsolete tomorrow. Challenging times.
Indeed. Exciting too, though. Dom and Karen, I want to get to both of you. I know we've only got a few minutes left, but I did want to get to both of you on this same question. What, if anything, do you think is unique to Australia, in your cases, in the legal Gen AI space? And Dom, if I may ask that question of you first.
Yeah, maybe I'll just touch on from a technical or kind of coming from the vendor standpoint, which is what's quite unique this time is that we're not unique, if that makes sense, which is everyone is tackling the same problems in every jurisdiction, in every market, in real time. So in the kind of journey that LawPath's on, we've used different technologies over the years. And one of the kind of hacks has always been, we could just look to the American market, find the models, find the technology, find the things that were gaining traction there, and then adapt them for our market. And this is probably the first time I've come across a scenario where I look to the US and they're actually still wondering what's going to work and how it's going to work. So I suppose that is something that we have definitely found in terms of technical challenges that we're facing, is that there's nowhere to really look to figure this out. And so we are all figuring it out real time, which is exciting, but at the same time means that we maybe don't have the unfair advantage we had before, which was there was a bit of certainty on what was going to happen. And it probably relates to legislation as well. You know, everyone is trying to figure it out more or less in real time. So it's probably one of the big things that I have found with the most recent kind of changes.
I think it also points to the opportunity of collaboration, because rather than us all going off in different ways, we've got the opportunity to try and advance this together. But let me get you to wrap on this one, Karen. What do you think is unique about Australia in legal Gen AI?
Yeah, look, I agree with Dom's point, is that I don't think we are unique at the moment, because I think everyone globally is wrestling with this. They're wrestling with the legal impacts, the data, the privacy, you know, confidentiality. I suppose I don't have too much more to add on that one, Terry, other than to say, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves. The one thing I will say is, you know, I think you do have to have the right cultural elements internally to leverage this technology. So I think that build on capability, and that just might differentiate organizations because the technology is there anyway. But yeah, not massively different across the globe, I don't think. You know, where that will be in a year's time, I don't know. But again, not massively different. I do think the one interesting thing over here is the nature and the way in which we're going to be able to interact with the technology will probably remove a bit of friction that we've had in previous legal technologies. And what I mean by that is, previous legal technologies, you almost had to take lawyers outside of their familiar territory. And I think Matt referenced this before. It's very hard to get lawyers out of email and Word and the like. The beauty with, you know, the likes of plugins, for example, is we can leave our lawyers in exactly where they are most familiar, and they can go out and fetch the information effectively through co-pilots, can go out and fetch information for you. And I think, you know, that will mean this will be easier for lawyers to adopt. There will be that cultural element, and I do think that will play into it, but it will be easier to adopt, and hence why I actually don't think there's a huge amount that differentiates at the moment.
So I'm going to stay with you and wrap by asking you all this same question. Should we therefore, as an industry, feel a sense of urgency to embrace generative AI? Karen, what do you think?
I would say undoubtedly, Terry. I think this appears to be very different. I don't think we're going to see the levels of success people predict in the very short term. I still do think it is going to take a bit of time. And to Dom's point, like, there's some really great use cases beyond legal over here. Absolutely, we need to go in and also be really upskilled in this area, because we need to understand how to utilize it. And again, I know I've mentioned this earlier, but both take on both the opportunity, but also understand the risks that it presents for us as well. And if we're informed, we actually will be more likely to jump in and actually leverage this technology, because we can utilize it in safe ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Dom, sense of urgency, should we feel it?
Again, I think you're going to get the same answer from all of us. That's why we're on this panel. But you know, coming at this from a small law, almost access to justice angle, absolutely. This technology has, with the right guardrails, this technology has the ability to fundamentally change how legal services are delivered, and fundamentally change what the industry hasn't been able to figure out yet, which is a lot of people cannot access legal advice. So again, with a human in the loop or the guardrails set, I foresee there's a massive impact that it can have. And what we're seeing is it's really being driven by clients. I think probably at the enterprise level, and I'm not in that space, so definitely correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but it's kind of the incentives there are like, how can our firm be more efficient? How can we do better work? And then pass those on to the clients. At the kind of SMB level, consumer level, consumers are now used to using these type of tools in all other professional and services industries that they're engaging with, but not only that, in all other platforms or goods and services that they're engaging with. So we're seeing a huge kind of push from consumers, almost saying, why aren't you using it? If there's a process that doesn't, it's still an old school process. They're saying, well, why hasn't this been updated? So I don't think you're going to miss out if you haven't got involved yet, but I would say definitely get it on your radar.
Can I just respond very quickly there?
Sure,
I think there is a real mix in terms of clients, in my view, and from what I have seen. I think there is lots of concern also around data and confidentiality and the like, and I think it is going to take a bit of time for that to play out. So I think there is enthusiasm, there is no doubt, but I think it is very depending on clients.
Yeah. I think probably our clients come from different risk profiles, Karen.
Yeah.
And Matt, the last word is yours. Should we feel urgency?
Well, look, I absolutely agree with what Karen and Dom have said. Safe and responsible use is the watchword. If I can leave you with a call to action, go sign up just the free version to Gemini or ChatGPT or Copilot and go and have a chat with it, a long chat about something that you are an expert on. That might be law, might be something else. And I think you'll kind of be, even if you're not a computer person, you know how to talk. Have a chat with it and see what it can do. And I think you'll be amazed by what it can do, but you'll also be amazed at what its shortcomings are. Yeah. And that will give you a much greater feel, I think, for where you can rely on it and where you can't. Again, like, feel free to hit me up if you want some, some prompt suggestions, but there's a lot online, how to get the most out of this. And all I'd say is start. Go and talk to it about, yachting or cricket or something, and just see. You'll get a much better feel for its capabilities. It's not magic, but it's pretty close. But you do need to know where the pitfalls are.
It's a great point to end on. I mean, this is technology that you're not going to learn by observation. You have to actually roll your sleeves up and get into it. So a great and a positive note to end on. Matt, Dom, Karen, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your time. Great discussion, great way to kick off our series, and very grateful to you all for it. Thank you, everyone who attended. Wonderful to have you here. I know these folks will be open to you contacting them via LinkedIn, and you'll find them all there if you do have questions afterwards. So please do. Bye.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry. Ka kite.
Bye-bye.